2005 under President Bush. So why would you stand on the House? I mean, I don't understand. This is not new. It was done.
Let me reclaim my time.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it is. We started in 2005 and started rolling it out a few at a time, experimenting with it, and now I've increased it. In fact, the administration has asked for $50,000 more a month and has actually asked for $52 million more to increase the usage of this.
Thank you for clarifying that it's not new. Thank you.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Florida. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
Madam Speaker, we have somebody who wanted to speak on this amendment. Could we ask unanimous consent that we go back and allow the gentleman from Missouri to speak? Strike the requisite number of words.
Anyone wish to strike the last word?
This will not be a process that will continue. This is a one-time only.
The amendment is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
To strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, the American Community Survey is absolutely vital. That's why I'm kind of stunned at what I'm hearing. It not only allowed us to replace the long-form census, making it easier for everyone to participate in the decennial census, but it provides all Americans with important information. But one particular area is of great concern to me, and that's the use of ACS data in determining the distribution of a substantial proportion of federal assistance. Now, we talk about accountability here. Well, let's start being accountable. Put your actions to words. In fiscal year 2008, 184 federal domestic assistance programs used ACS-related data to help guide the distribution of $416 billion. And that's not chump change. It's taxpayer dollars. This represents 29% of all federal assistance. The ACS-guided grants accounted for $389.2 billion, or 69% of all federal grant funding. Most of ACS-guided federal assistance goes to state governments through a handful of large formula grant programs to aid low-income households and support highway infrastructure. Medicaid alone accounts for 63% of ACS-guided funding. ACS-guided funding is highly concentrated in a small number of programs, recipient states, departments, and budget functions. State per capita ACS-guided funding is positively related to income inequality, high annual pay, high poverty, Medicaid income limits, and the percent of the population that is rural. The higher any of these measures, the higher per capita funding tends to be. You know, the ACS is absolutely vital. So if you want to eliminate that, I'm sure you have certain reasons to do it, but it will take away an essential tool for us to be accountable with taxpayer dollars. So sign your name on the bottom line if you want to. But I suggest you think twice before you eliminate the ACS. And, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose is the gentleman from
Let me seek unanimous consent that we have a recorded vote on this amendment.
How do we do that? For what purpose is the gentleman for Virginia rise?
I object.
You object? The gentleman
Okay,
objects.
no problem. We'll have an opportunity to have a vote notwithstanding.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment 57 to start with.
The clerk will designate the amendment. 57.
Actually, he just had his number. He's just going by his number right now.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Flores of Texas, page 101, after line 10, insert the following new section, Section 542. None of the funds made available by this Act may be used to enforce Section 526 of the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007, Public Law 110-140-42, U.S.C. 171-42.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise to offer an amendment which would address another restrictive and misguided federal regulation. Section 526 of the Energy Independence and Security Act prohibits federal agencies from entering into contract for the procurement of an alternative fuel unless its life cycle greenhouse gas emissions are less than or equal to emissions from an equivalent conventional fuel produced from conventional petroleum sources. In summary, my amendment would stop the government from enforcing this ban on all federal agencies funded by the CJS Appropriations Bill. The initial purpose of Section 526 was to stifle the Defense Department's plans to buy and develop coal-based or coal-to-liquids jet fuels, and this stifling was based on the opinion of environmentalists that coal-based jet fuel produces more greenhouse gas emissions than traditional petroleum. I recently offered similar amendments to 4 appropriations bills last year, and each passed this House by a voice vote. My friend Mr. Conaway of Texas also had language added to the Defense Authorization Bill last year to exempt the Defense Department from this burdensome regulation. We must ensure that our military has adequate fuel resources and can efficiently rely on domestic and more stable sources of fuel. But Section 526 ban on fuel choice now affects all federal agencies, not just the Defense Department. This is why I'm offering this amendment again today for the CJS Appropriations Bill. Federal agencies should not be burdened with wasting their time studying fuel emissions when there is a simple fix, and that's not restricting their fuel choices based on extreme environmental views, policies, and misguided regulations like Section 526. With increasing competition for energy and fuel resources, and the continued volatility and instability in the Middle East, it is now more important than ever for our country to become more energy independent and to further develop and produce our domestic energy resources. Placing limits on federal agencies' fuel choices is an unacceptable precedent to set in regard to America's energy policy and independence. Madam Chair, Section 526 makes our nation more dependent on Middle East oil. Stopping the impact of Section 526 will help us promote American energy, improve the American economy, and create American jobs. Let's remember the following facts about Section 526. It increases our reliance on Middle Eastern oil. It hurts our military readiness, national energy security. It prevents the increased use of safe, clean, and efficient North American oil and gas. It increases the cost of American food and energy. It hurts American jobs and the American economy. And last and certainly not least, it costs their taxpayers more of their hard-earned dollars. I urge my colleagues to support passage of this common-sense amendment. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
I rise to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
The Congress of the United States, in a bipartisan vote, passed the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. It was signed into law by President Bush. It just suggests that in federal procurement, when we're seeking energy, that departments should use energy-efficient sources so that we don't rely on unnecessary Middle East supplies for oil. This removes this requirement, and so I would hope that we would vote against it. This has been a part of the law for a number of years now, and it has helped save taxpayers money. I would ask for a no vote on the amendment.
The gentleman yield back.
I'd be glad to yield.
I concur with the gentleman. This is an effort to overturn a law that was passed in 2007 that says
Well, gentleman,
we're going to try to do the most energy-efficient approach to running the government. I think it's just common sense, and I urge a no vote on this amendment.
The gentleman yield his time.
I'd be glad to yield.
Let's walk through this again. If you can't, for instance, if you can't use fuel that's refined from Canadian oil sands, which is blended in with fuels from all sorts of oil sources, then you're stuck to use conventional sources, which means you're stuck with Middle Eastern oil.
Reclaiming my time.
And
reclaiming my time. The section that you attempt to strike from the Energy Independence and Security Act that was passed in a bipartisan way, signed by President Bush, does not specify Canadian sand oil. What it says is that you have to use the most energy efficient source that's available. That is what our government's been doing over a bipartisan administration. It has saved billions of dollars for taxpayers. It saved billions of dollars for taxpayers. And so you're offering today on an appropriations bill this effort to prohibit really should be handled in the Energy Committee.
Well, the gentleman yield, for instance.
I'd be glad to yield.
One of the things the Navy's had to do in order to do this and to develop other alternative fuel sources, because it's not sure where it's going to get its fuel, is it started using biofuels at the cost of $20+ a gallon instead of buying it at $5 a gallon for jet fuel. That is not easier on the taxpayer.
Reclaiming my time.
Taxpayer.
We're not trying to decide parochial kind of decisions about which might be purchased and which not. The law, as passed by a Congress and signed under President Bush, requires the department to act in terms of energy efficiency and to save taxpayers money. You want to prohibit that on behalf of what you think is a more appropriate way to go. We should make an amendment to that law, bring it to the floor, bring it to the Energy Committee, and not attach it to a rider on this appropriations bill, because we can't have a full debate on the merits thereof. Thank you. I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the chairs. The noes have it. Yeah. No, I know. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it.
I ask for a recorded.
Amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I'd request a recorded vote.
The pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed.
Madam Chair.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
I ask unanimous consent that I be permitted to request a recorded vote on the amendment of the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Webster.
Is there any objection? Without objection, a recorded vote is requested on the Webster amendment. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Florida will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Flores of Texas. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. None of the funds made available by this Act may be used to implement the National Ocean Policy developed under Executive Order 13547, 75 Federal Register 43023, relating to the stewardship of oceans, coast, and the Great Lakes.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, I rise to offer a simple amendment to address an overreach by the executive branch of the federal government. My amendment bans the use of federal funds for the implementation of Executive Order 13547. Executive Order 13547, signed in 2009, requires that various bureaucracies essentially zone the ocean and the sources thereof. This could mean that a drop of rain that lands on your roof could cause the federal government to have jurisdiction over your property, since that drop will eventually wind up in the ocean. Concerns have been raised that the recently created National Ocean Policy may not only restrict ocean and inland activities, but given that it has not received any of its own funding, it will take scarce funds away from federal agencies and their currently authorized activities that are critical to the ocean and coastal economies, as well as our overall economy. And I look at a chart that I prepare. I look at Chart 1, reveals just how overreaching, overly burdensome, and ill-conceived this plan is. The Natural Resources Committee continues to ask questions about ocean zoning, including its scope and its cost. However, we are not getting answers from the administration. Where's the watershed? This chart, which is just the watershed for the Mississippi River, our largest river, shows that 26 states would be affected by ocean zoning. It gives, this executive order would give unprecedented federal reach by the federal regional planning bodies to areas far inland to dictate activities that may affect the ocean or Great Lakes. And this is just one example of the incredible reach of this particular law, or this particular executive order. When you hear the words national ocean policy, it sounds benign, but that's only a small part of the story. The scope and reach of this regulation is why we have the Chamber of Commerce, the American Farm Bureau, the home builders, the timber, mining, and fisheries groups weighing in so heavily against this executive order. It affects our whole nation and our whole economy. Again, if you think about it, it means a drop of rain that falls on your property could be subject to this law. No, the red one. Now, the last thing we need in Washington today is more bureaucracies. And you can see by this chart, this executive order creates a huge new bureaucracy at a time when we're trying to grow our economy. This law, this policy has been debated in the last 4 Congresses, and each time Congress elected to do nothing. So Congress explicitly does not intend for the oceans to be zoned in the manner that the President's proposed to do it. Thus, Executive Order 13547 has no specific statutory authority, and there have been no congressional appropriations to pay for the cost of this new bureaucracy. There are 63 agencies that are involved with this new policy. The last thing we need is more federal bureaucracy trying to say that it's enacting a policy which doesn't cost anything. The last thing we need are more regulations from bodies like this in an already uncertain economic environment. We also have a list of 83 groups that are in support of our proposed amendment. And these groups include, as I said before, the American Farm Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, the National Association of Home Builders, the offshore fishing industries, not only recreational but commercial, and the energy industries, including the renewable energy industries. We have letters of support for this as well. In closing, there are significant concerns that remain related to the implementation of this executive order, its impact, the limit of its authority, and the lack of true stakeholder involvement. I urge you to support this amendment and stop excessive regulation and protect our ocean and affiliated inland economies. The particular agency that is affected under CJS more than any of the others is the Coastal and Marine Spatial Planning Office, and that was specifically zeroed out in fiscal 2012. But this is the group, that red chart shows you that it's still actively involved in the process. Now, where they're getting the money, I don't know, but we have to assume it's from the taxpayer. I'm just asking that Congress do what Congress intended, and that's not to have this activity. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
I rise to strike the last word.
The gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Rather than attempt to restrict the President's efforts in this regard, I actually applaud the President's efforts. I was at the Coastal Zone Conference when the ocean policy, I think, was applauded by literally thousands of Americans from across the country when it was held in Chicago last year. We as a nation have more responsibility for the world's oceans than any other nation on the face of the earth. There are documented challenges to the ocean's health that have been, I think, well documented. If you have a problem with the executive order, the problem is really not with the President of the United States. It's with the United States Congress. We have passed laws giving various responsibilities and duties to over 63 different agencies having to do with our stewardship of the oceans. And the only thing that exists in the executive order is the President not taking any new action, but to coordinate and supervise the implementation of the existing laws as passed by this Congress under the past 4 presidents of the United States, so that we can try to come to grips with the circumstances that have brought such dire conditions to the oceans of the world. So I applaud the President. I oppose this amendment that seeks to prohibit essentially the executive branch from implementation of congressional laws that have been passed by the Congress. There's absolutely no other, this idea that there's any kind of power grab in the executive order. I would invite members to read it. It does not do anything other than to move to more efficiently implement laws passed by our Congress. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington State rise?
I move to strike the last word, Mr.
The gentleman is
Chairman.
recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to support the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Flores, a member of the Natural Resources Committee. We have had several hearings on this executive order and the potential impacts that this executive order would have far, far beyond ocean policy. The Natural Resources Committee also obviously has concerns about our environment. That's probably one of the reasons that the committee was created many, many Congresses ago. But this step by this administration with this executive order goes far, far beyond what anybody would envision, and is being done without going through the normal process. The gentleman from Texas, in his remarks, stated several organizations that are opposed to this executive order, and amongst those, the Farm Bureau. Now, when one thinks about the Farm Bureau, they're an organization that represents our diverse agriculture industry across the country. But you don't associate the Farm Bureau policies with the oceans or lakes. You associate them with crops that are grown in dry land or irrigated land or whatever the case may be. So that being the case, why should the Farm Bureau be concerned about a policy dealing with ocean planning? Well, the reason why is obviously in the fine print, because in the fine print of the executive order, it says that this ocean policy should look at a number of things, including, and I quote, by promoting and implementing sustainable practices on land. So it means that implementing practices on land, are those positive or negative? I will be happy to yield to my friend.
Let me just say this. One of the problems we have is with runoff from agricultural lands that goes into the Chesapeake Bay, that goes into Puget Sound, it goes into the ocean.
Reclaiming my time,
and that has to be dealt with in order to protect the ocean.
Reclaiming my time, I'd be more than happy to
controls the time. Gentleman's recognized.
I'd be more than happy to respond to my good friend in that regard. So this is obviously the concern because of that, and they say then that rightfully so in their letter that was sent out to all members of Congress, that thus instead of being limited to oceans and coasts, the national ocean policy could extend to the regulation of every farm and ranch in the United States. Now, I think they are right on that. But we do have statutes, by the way, that deal precisely with what my good friend from Washington brought up to me just a moment ago, and that's the Clean Water Act. That's what part of that is all about, is to deal with that. This is an executive order that gives potential authority far, far beyond those acts, and it's done by executive order. Now, there is a process to go through. Sometimes we can agree with that process or disagree, but at least let's go through that process with the Congress making the policy. That's what the issue is here with this executive order. And finally, let me make this observation, since my good friend from Washington brought this up. Our state of Washington has an ocean policy. It was done by statute. And in it, it specifically says, in that statute, and I quote, The Marine Management Plan, meaning the ocean policy, the Marine Management Plan must be developed and implemented in a manner that recognizes and respects existing uses, end quote. I think that's good policy. In fact, that's probably why so many Northwest fishing organizations are in support of the Flores amendment. But the policy that is driving this executive order is contrary to that. And let me take a direct quote out of this policy driving this executive order. It says, and I quote, "The task force is mindful that these recommendations may create a level of uncertainty and anxiety among those who rely on these resources." Resources meaning the land. Now, Mr. Chairman, I have to say, does this not sound suspiciously like we have to pass a bill to find out what's in it? Does that sound somewhat familiar? So I think the gentleman from Texas is exactly right on. The way that we can exercise our prerogative and our authority is to deny funding. And by the way, speaking about funding, we had the Council of Economic Equality in front of our committee asking particularly where is all this funding coming from. We've asked by letter. They have yet to respond. So they're picking parts of it here and there that's not showing up on anybody's budget at all. I ask unanimous consent for one additional minute.
Gentleman recognized. Objection? Gentleman recognized for one additional minute.
And so what this attempt to do by the gentleman from Texas with his amendment is simply to say, okay, we're going to exercise our authority, and our authority is not to give any agency that contributes to this policy any funds. It's nothing more than that. So I urge my colleagues to support the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas, and with that I'll yield back my time.
Time for what purpose? The gentleman from California rise.
Strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I can't believe what we're hearing here. How quickly we forget. It was your committee, Mr. Chairman, that passed the bill, bipartisan bill, that created the Ocean Commission, signed into law by President Clinton, and then the appointees to that commission made by President Bush. Who was on that commission? Chair of it was Admiral Watkins, former head of the Navy, former Secretary of Energy, a great Republican, a great admiral who understood ocean policy. Who else was on that committee? Oil and gas executives, fish processors, all kinds of people, because we set up a commission to look at these conflicts of sea. Why? Because, as was stated, America has more ocean water than any other country in the world because of the exclusive economic zone, which also applies to all the atolls and islands like Guam, Hawaii, and so on. What's happening in that? We were having all kinds of conflicts between dredge boats that were looking, seismic boats that were going out to look for oil and gas, fishermen who had crab pots, stationary pots, buoys, everything that you could think of. And everybody came and said the only government that can resolve this is the United States Congress, because these are all federal agencies. Well, they don't talk to each other. They don't have any coordination. We need to resolve this.
Well, the gentleman
so we appointed a commission, and they did their work. They had hearings all over the United States. They came back with their policies. And guess what we did? Like we do when we have commission work. We implemented those policies.
Will the gentleman yield?
Now, I worked very hard on it, but I wasn't going to be the lead author on the bill because it was a Republican administration. So your colleagues, Jim Saxon, authored that bill.
Will the gentleman yield?
Your colleague, Congressman Gilchrist, authored that bill. Your colleague, Jim Greenwood, authored that bill. Your colleague, Mr. Kirk Weldon, authored that bill. These were Republican bills before your committee, and guess what? The chair at that time, Mr. Pombo, would not even hear their bills. Wouldn't hear them. Admiral Watkins came here and asked for a hearing on it. That policy's been lingering for over a decade. And all of the recommendations into that went to the administration. And guess what this administration did? They assembled every single agency of government, including DHS, including State Department, including Department of Defense. They were all in it because they all have issues. We have an ambassador for fish, for example. It's in the State Department. All these things need to be discussed and resolved. And they came up with this ocean policy. This is to avoid conflicts. And everybody's satisfied by it. The Navy needs it. The military needs it for security purposes. You're nuts not to have it. So to defund this because you say your committee hasn't heard it, which is just false because your committee had that bill for not one session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions, about 4 sessions, and never took it up and never dealt with the policy. It was all there. For lack of congressional action, this is now done by executive order. Thank God it's done by executive order. And those fears of Farm Bureau, those were all the people that were opposed because they said, well, these things may happen. Well, my God, when are we worried about what somebody because they're in Idaho and thinks that potato farmers are going to be affected by ocean policy? Come on, that's a stretch.
The gentleman yield.
So I tell you, this amendment is not only not good, it goes backwards in being able to deal with the conflicts of sea and being able to do with what the United States government has to do, lead the world on ocean policy, not take a second seat to it. I urge a strong defeat.
Will the gentleman yield?
Certainly I'll yield.
The gentleman started his remarks, and here's the crux of the issue right here. The gentleman started his remarks by saying that the committee on which I had the privilege to chair created the OSHA Commission. I was not on the committee at the time, but I acknowledge that. We did create that. Now, one of the recommendations, and this is the crux of the matter right here, one of the recommendations that came out of that committee was this. It said that the policies, the Ocean Council should work with Congress and so on to develop a flexible and voluntary process for the creation of regional ocean councils. States working with relevant stakeholders should use this process to establish regional ocean councils. Now, that is exactly what process we should be going, but the process of the executive order is 180 degrees from that. 180 degrees. So the legislation the gentleman is citing is being used contrary to what he is trying to promote. No, that's the whole point of this amendment.
Because you're absolutely wrong.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
I ask unanimous consent the gentleman get another 2 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Is there objection to an additional 2 minutes to the gentleman from California? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. As the President cannot create the councils by executive order, the councils have to be created by Congress. I would hope that the leadership of your committee and jurisdiction would create those councils so that they will have some bottoms-up authorities. I mean, we have the fishery councils.
Would the gentleman yield to me real quickly? I just want to make the point. The gentleman makes the point of how maybe the process should work. And the commission was created. My objection, and I think the gentleman from Texas' objection, is this is being done by executive order, and the way that the process is laid out totally ignores the recommendation that came out of that policy. That is the whole point. Now,
reclaiming my time that you yield to me, thank you very much. Look, the responsible issue here is if you want to do that, let's have a congressional hearing, an oversight hearing on this ocean policy. I'd be proud to defend it, but to say a meat axe approach is to whack it and say whatever it is, whatever accomplishments it's, we're not going to allow it to be implemented, I think is reckless and irresponsible.
Will the gentleman yield just for a moment? We have had 5 hearings on this, just to make the point.
Back the balance of his time.
Sorry.
Chooses rise.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this amendment.
This gentleman move to strike the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
It is time for the Republicans to stop being afraid of common sense initiatives like the National Ocean Policy. And why is that? Well, it's because the National Ocean Policy will reduce bureaucracy, streamline government operations. And why would anyone be opposed to that? Could it be because big oil doesn't want anyone other than themselves to have a voice in how we are using our coastal resources? Is that what this is all about? Is this really just another drill baby drill issue where the oil industry has a policy, oil industry has a voice, and what we're trying to say here is that others should have a voice too. They're America's ocean, not ExxonMobil's ocean. So following a decade of discussion and shareholder engagement, President Obama established the National Ocean Policy in July of 2010. Creating such a policy was a cornerstone recommendation of President Bush's U.S. Commission on Ocean Policy. And now, following even more public engagement, we await the final National Ocean Policy Implementation Plan to come out this summer. Now, the assertions that the policy will create new regulations, usurp state authority, restrict land use, or zone the oceans are patently false and misleading.
Well, gentlemen,
let me conclude. The National Ocean Policy will allow federal agencies to better coordinate amongst themselves and with other levels of government and all stakeholders to eliminate red tape while managing effectively for multiple ocean uses. Opposing ocean planning is like opposing air traffic control. You can do it, but it will cause a mess or lead to dire consequences. Our coastal counties make up only 18% of the country's land area, but are home to 108 million people, or 36% of our nation's population. These numbers are steadily increasing. There's a saying in Washington, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. When it comes to our nation's oceans, more and more guests are coming to dinner. Fishing grounds, shipping lanes, Navy training ranges, offshore energy production, wildlife habitats, and other uses are increasingly in competition, and the National Ocean Policy will help ensure that everyone has a seat at the table. Instead of supporting a plan for our oceans, the Republican majority continues to pursue scare tactics, claiming that the policy creates additional regulation and kills American jobs. And yet, they have no evidence that that is the case. So let's go to what this bill proposes to do. It proposes to slash $93 million from the NOAA budget, threatening the health, the safety, and the prosperity of Americans.
Well, the gentleman yields.
Specifically, the bill calls for a $5 million reduction to the NOAA Coastal Services Center, which helps the states, the localities, and individuals protect private property and valuable infrastructure by addressing challenges associated with flooding, hurricanes, sea level rise, and other coastal hazards. Two, this bill, the Republican bill, seeks to cut $32 million in the National Marine Fisheries Service, which has the difficult responsibility of managing fisheries to sustain our coastal communities and ocean ecosystems. And they also want to cut $30 million, which will be cut from NOAA's competitive climate research budget at a time when much of our country has been experiencing severe drought and other extreme weather. We need to study and understand these extreme weather events in order to protect lives and livelihoods. By sticking our heads in the sand and refusing to act, we do a disservice to the people we are elected to represent. We know that the oceans are warming dramatically because of climate change. Should we study that? We know that tornadoes are now ripping through the Middle West in February, not in April or May. Should we be studying that? We know that people now all across the country are becoming more fearful of these ever-intensifying climate conditions that are threatening the lives and the livelihoods of tens of millions of Americans. Should we be studying this? What do the Republicans say in their budget? No. So I understand that some of them do not believe that this should be studied. I understand that they do not believe that the ordinary American is becoming increasingly concerned about this change in climate. But I tell you this, I urge a no vote against this Republican proposal.
For what purpose, gentleman from Washington, rise?
I rise in strong opposition to the Flores amendment.
Gentleman seek to strike the last word?
The implementation of
the gentleman seek to strike the last word?
Yeah, I move to strike the last word.
Yeah, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
The implementation of the National Ocean Policy will help to protect, maintain, and restore our ocean, coastal, island, and Great Lakes ecosystem, which provides jobs, food, and recreation, and serves as the foundation for a substantial part of our nation's economy. Only healthy, functioning, and resilient marine and freshwater ecosystems can support the fisheries which we depend on so heavily. Across the continental United States, our coastal and ocean ecosystems are suffering from an outdated issue-by-issue approach to stewardship and management. We are already seeing the threats posed by ocean acidification, low dissolved oxygen, harmful algae blooms, and dead zones in the Gulf, the Chesapeake, and Puget Sound, unfortunately, and throughout our nation's coastal waterways. The National Ocean Policy would help us better address the cumulative threats to our aquatic ecosystems from overfishing, coastal development, stormwater runoff, carbon emissions, and other pollutants entering our waterways, and will also help us balance the many overlapping ocean uses. The core approach of the National Ocean Policy is to improve stewardship of our oceans, coast, islands, and Great Lakes by directing government agencies with differing mandates to coordinate and work better together. The National Ocean Policy creates no new authorities. The result of increased coordination will be better stewardship of our natural heritage through improved government efficiency, better development, and use of data and information, and a process of open and transparent stakeholder engagement that informs decision-making. This increased coordination between agencies is the sort of effort that needs to be taking place on a federal level in order to reduce inefficiency, waste, and redundancy between agencies. The National Ocean Council brings together state, local, tribal governments and all of the ocean users, including recreational and commercial fishermen, boaters, industry, scientists, and the public, to better plan for, manage, harmonize, and sustain uses of ocean and coastal resources. The virtue of the National Ocean Policy is that it develops and facilitates the planning process, deals with many overlapping ocean uses, and expedites the approval process of new uses being introduced. The National Ocean Policy offers an avenue for thoughtful planning and is the best choice for these stakeholders looking to be involved in the process or at least having some voice in the discussion. While not required to participate, most states and regions see the benefit of marine planning as a way to leverage their interest and achieve desirable outcomes. I would say to my friend from Texas, in the Pacific Ocean, there is debris the size of the state of Texas. Now, if you think we're taking care of our oceans, if we're taking care of our rivers and streams and lakes, you are, at best, ill-informed. We need a national effort, an international effort to clean up the oceans, to protect the oceans. And what do we get from the Republicans? A non-science, non-factual approach to this problem. It's disgusting, to say the least.
The gentleman yield.
Back to the balance of his time. Members are admonished to direct their comments to the chair. The gentleman yields from Washington yields to the gentleman from Washington.
I appreciate the gentleman for yielding time. The gentleman, when he made his remarks about all of the challenges we face, nobody, if you heard, nobody is arguing on our side about that. Nobody is arguing about that. It is the structure in which we are talking about here. And we have, unfortunately, we have experienced painfully in this body, in this country, when we have a structure of a top-down solution, it always seems to come out wrong. And that is what the issue is all about. We have had 5 hearings, like I said, in my committee on this issue. But the way this is set up, it was designed to be voluntary. And it was designed to be in corroboration with the states. Our state, our home state of Washington, has responded to that. But the way this is written and the way it is interpreted, it is a top-down issue. And if we let it continue going, we're going to have this problem.
With all due respect, I take back my time just for briefly to say to the gentleman, what we have been doing isn't working. The oceans are in trouble. We have got acidification that affects our shellfish, and it's because of too much carbon dioxide going into the oceans. The oceans are warming. We have got, and the oceans, the world cannot survive without the oceans.
The time of the gentleman has expired.
I ask for 1 additional minute.
Does the gentleman ask unanimous consent?
I ask unanimous consent for 1 additional minute.
Is there objection?
I just say
gentleman
to my
is
good
recognized
friend,
for 1 additional minute.
I just say to my good friend, you know, there is a problem with fertilizer off of agricultural lands. We've got it in Puget Sound. These are serious matters that have to be dealt with, and to look the other way is not a solution.
The gentleman yield.
I yield.
Listen, I'm aware of that. Clean Water Act takes care of that, and that process is going through. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. But just let me make an analogy that I think the gentleman would agree with. We had a long debate last night on catch shares, something entirely different. The gentleman was defending, very much so, and I agree with him, was defending the fact that there's regional planning and catch shares works in our part of the country. That is all that we're saying. We think that is probably a better model. This executive order is contrary to that. So my arguments here over and over has been the model, and that's why we should defund it and come back and do it correctly. And I thank the gentleman for yielding to me.
No more hearings. Let's have a bill. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose, gentleman from Colorado rise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I seek to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I would yield my time to so much time as he may desire to the gentleman from Texas.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Gardner. Look, let's make sure we all understand exactly what my amendment does. My amendment doesn't roll back any regulation that currently exists. My amendment doesn't strike any money for any agency that is currently looking at how the ocean works. My amendment does nothing like that. My amendment specifically says that if this process is going to be done, that it's going to start where the Constitution says it starts. It starts in the United States Congress. Now, Mr. Farr talked a few minutes ago about how this was already an authorized activity. And to that extent, he introduced a bill in the 111th Congress. It was H.R. 21. He introduced it on January 6, 2009. That has not become law. There has never been an appropriation that has been issued to support that. On the other hand, here's what the executive order does do. It creates, let me see if I can find it creates 10 new national policies, 9 new national priority objectives, 9 new strategic action plans, 7 new national goals for coastal marine spatial planning, 12 new guiding principles for coastal marine spatial planning. In addition, the agencies are advised to evaluate necessary and appropriate legislative solutions or changes to regulations to address the constraints. That, my friends, did not start in the United States Congress pursuant to the Constitution. Now, it's been said this is not going to cause any additional regulation. It's been said this is not really ocean zoning. Well, let me give you an example of one of the things it requires to happen. It requires the Department of Transportation to inventory and evaluate best management practices to address stormwater runoff from federal aid, from the federal aid highway system. Let's see, what are some of the other ones that are interesting here? It provides, in terms of, it says it's not zoning, where people say it's not zoning. It says CMSP allows for a comprehensive look at multiple sector demands, which would provide a more complete evaluation of cumulative effects. This ultimately is intended to result in protection of areas that are essential for the resiliency and maintenance of a healthy ecosystem, services, and biological diversity. I've got no problems doing that, but as long as the Congress authorizes it and then the Congress appropriates the money to do so. The Constitution doesn't say that the President's king, and under the executive orders he can do whatever he wants to. Not yet. This action...
Gentleman from Colorado controls the time.
What's that? Okay. This action will identify and assess high-quality ocean and coastal waters and the waters that drain into them and establish or modify existing water quality monitoring protocols and programs. That sounds like a regulation to me. That's government speak for regulation. This executive order is an overreach. The cost of this executive order is being hidden. The National Ocean Council specifically asked agencies to tell us what this is going to cost, and the agencies have specifically refused to comply. The Natural Resources Committee in these hearings has specifically asked for the cost of this program, and we've specifically been ignored. Now, if these agencies are spending this money to implement this policy, this program, this executive order, where are they taking it from? What legislatively authorized activities are not being done and what appropriated dollars are being used from their appropriated function for something else. What's going on? There are 83 interest groups in this country that are not the types that you would not like. It includes folks like the cattlemen and the farmers that think that this is an overreach, that think that this could damage our way of life. And all they want is to have a clear and transparent and constitutional process for this to be carried out.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'll yield.
And from Colorado controls the time.
I'm sorry, we're out of time.
The gentleman from Colorado controls the time.
City yield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, for the sake of expediting this conversation, I'll yield back my time, and perhaps you can find somebody else to yield.
Gentleman yields back balance of his time.
Appreciate it, Corey.
The gentleman from Virginia rise.
I rise to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise as well in very strong opposition to this amendment that prohibits funding for the National Ocean Policy. The purpose of this policy is to improve our nation's ocean management effort, to protect and to create jobs, and to grow our economy by ensuring all the multiple uses of the ocean are coordinated in a more seamless manner. Far from a heavy-handed federal directive as it's being described, the National Ocean Policy will actually streamline government programs and regulations. It'll reduce bureaucratic red tape. And perhaps most importantly, it enlists local stakeholders in the decision-making process. And it shouldn't be a partisan issue. The National Ocean Policy was a cornerstone recommendation of both the independent Pew Oceans Commission, which was chaired by current Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta, and by the U.S. Commission on Ocean Policy, appointed by George W. Bush. Both commissions called for harmonizing the responsibilities of the 27 different federal agencies with jurisdiction over some aspect of ocean management. As my colleagues can imagine, the current arrangement has led to ineffective management of resources, inefficient use of taxpayer dollars, and increased conflicts and costs among a growing number of ocean users. Strategic planning maximizes organizational efficiency and use of public resources. The National Ocean Policy will improve opportunities for community and citizen participation in the planning process and facilitate sustainable economic growth by providing transparency and predictability for economic investments. It represents a science-based strategy to align conservation and restoration goals at the federal, the state, the tribal, the local, and the regional levels. And it'll strengthen the integration of federal and non-federal ocean observing systems and data management into one national system. Of particular interest to me, the Chesapeake Bay, and I know it is to Congressman Chairman Wolf as well, the Chesapeake Bay is poised to benefit from the National Ocean Policy Action Plan. It'll help advance the Bay's health from increasing public school education about the Chesapeake region to creating a mapping tool for the Chesapeake Bay watershed that allows stakeholders to share information and ideas for land protection and restoration. It calls for the establishment of a National Shellfish Initiative in partnership with commercial and restoration aquaculture communities, which includes pilot projects to explore the ecosystem benefits of shellfish aquaculture while increasing shellfish production in U.S. waters. That's so important for our economy. In fact, all oceans, coasts, and Great Lakes are critical components of our nation's economy. U.S. coastal counties are home to more than half of all Americans. They generate an estimated $8 trillion a year, and they support 69 million jobs. Declining ocean health and a lack of effective coordination is putting this great economic engine at risk. Comprehensive planning will ensure the stability of the nation's seaports as additional users of ocean space evolve, including the responsible development of offshore energy resources. But we must make no mistake, this attempt to defund and delay the National Ocean Policy is a dangerous political move that puts the health of our oceans, our coastal communities, our jobs, and our fishing industry at risk. We need to protect, to maintain, and to restore the health of our oceans and coasts. Continuing to develop the National Ocean Policy offers our nation the best path forward. I urge my colleagues to oppose this misguided amendment, to do something that is very much needed for our economy and particularly for our coastal communities. Let's do the right thing. Let's get all these users organized together, working together in pursuit of a streamlined, consistent policy. It's the right thing to do. This amendment is not. Let's defeat this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time.
I do yield back the balance of my time, such as it is.
Colorado rise.
Last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Again, this is a little bit different than the optimism in Chicago at the Coastal Zone Conference, where the ocean policy just had such an enthusiastic response from constituencies all around the country and in other parts of the world. At the heart of the development of this was bipartisan. The Pew Foundation, headquartered in my home city of Philadelphia, the Linfest Foundation, led by Jerry Linfest, in their investments in studying the oceans. We've seen the work that has been done that's led to this. I would hope that we would oppose this amendment and we would work to build a further consensus and hopefully have legislation come out of the Natural Resources Committee. I thank the gentleman for yielding me time. I thank all of the people who participated in this debate. I hope that we vote this amendment down. I yield back.
Thank you. Reclaiming my time, I'd like to yield some time to the gentleman from California, Mr. Farr.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much for yielding. I think you can note the passion I've had in this issue because we worked at it a long time, and I want to assure you I'm ranking member of the Ag Appropriations Committee. I probably represent more productive agriculture than anybody in Congress. Just one county I represent has 85 crops in it, and we do about $4.2 billion of agriculture out of that county. I can assure you that coastal agriculture, coastal states agriculture, is very much concerned about all of these issues that are coming up and really supports the idea that we could have a coordinated effort. This is a long effort. I mean, we got the military involved in this. We've got FEMA involved in this. We've got the Department of Agriculture involved in this. We've got every other agency. And it's how you resolve conflicts that are there. Yes, we in Congress have enacted an awful lot of law. And I want to say that there isn't anything that the President has done or any of these agencies that are doing that isn't authorized in law. We gave them those authorities. We just never required them to all sit down and talk about where those conflicts and how to resolve those conflicts. We have a huge responsibility here. This is a long effort to create a national ocean policy. It's the smart thing to do. It's got all the federal agencies at the table finally, and it's got all the user groups, both private and public. So I just think that this is kind of a meat-axe approach to, if you do have concerns, let's do it in the regular legislative order, not just say that we're going to eliminate that whole ability for them to resolve conflicts. You're going to end up more lawsuits and a lot of concerns by people who are going to wonder what the future holds without a good comprehensive plan. So I, again, passionately ask my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to reject this amendment. It would be a very dangerous thing to do for this country, to adopt it.
I thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania and the gentleman for California for their hard work on this issue, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Being the chair, the noes have it. As for noes have it. For what purpose, gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Chairman, request recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed. For what purpose, gentleman from Virginia rise?
I move that the committee do now rise.
Question is on the motion that the committee rise. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises.
House will be in order, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 5326, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration H.R. 5326 and has come to no resolution thereon. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah rise?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged report from the Committee on the Budget.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Report to accompany H.R. 4966, a bill to amend the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985 to replace the sequester established by the Budget Control Act of 2011.
Referred to the Union calendar and ordered printed.
But the bill number's on the top.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What purpose does the gentleman from Utah rise?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged report from the Committee on the Budget.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Report to accompany H.R. 5652, a bill to provide for reconciliation pursuant to Section 201 of the concurrent resolution on the budget for fiscal year 2013.
Referred to the Union calendar and ordered printed. Pursuant to House Resolution 643 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and the Committee of the whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 5326.